The story begins with a ship called the Pharaon approaching the harbor of Marseille after a voyage from Smyrna, Trieste, and Naples. The sight of a ship arriving is always an exciting event in the city, especially since this vessel was built and owned locally. As the Pharaon moved closer, it became clear to the onlookers that something was not quite right. The ship sailed slowly and solemnly, giving rise to rumors of misfortune among the crowd. On board, a young sailor was working diligently. He was a tall and composed young man, about 18 or 20 years old, with striking black eyes and dark hair. His calm demeanor hinted at his experience and readiness to handle difficult situations. As the ship neared the harbor, a man named Carlos, a prominent figure in the maritime trade, decided to meet the ship early. He took a small boat and approached the vessel as it entered the inner port. The young sailor, Simons, greeted Carlos respectfully and quickly shared the sad news their captain, Josh, had died during the journey from a sudden brain fever. Despite the loss, Simons assured Carlos that the cargo was intact and everything else aboard the ship was in order. Carlos expressed his sorrow for the captain's death but seemed comforted by Simons's competence and the safe arrival of the ship. While Simons oversaw the crew anchoring the ship and preparing it for port, another figure emerged, Jorgen, the ship's supercargo. Unlike Simons, Jorgen was disliked by the crew for his arrogance and opportunistic behavior. He expressed subtle criticism of Simons, suggesting that he had taken unnecessary liberties by stopping at the island of Elba during the voyage. Jorgen claimed this detour caused a delay and hinted that Simons was overstepping his role. When Carlos questioned Simons about the stop at Elba, Simons explained that he had simply followed Captain Josh's final orders to deliver a package to Marshal Bertrand, a close associate of Emperor Benjamin. Simons even mentioned briefly meeting the Emperor during this visit. Carlos seemed both impressed and concerned about Simons's encounter, warning him to be cautious about revealing too much about his interaction with Benjamin, as it could invite trouble. As customs officers and health inspectors prepared to board the ship, Jorgen continued to sow doubt about Simons's actions, implying that Simons might not have disclosed everything. He hinted at a letter Captain Josh might have entrusted to Simons, which could hold significance. Through this introduction, Simons emerges as a capable and loyal sailor, respected by most but envied by Jorgen. The underlying tension between these characters sets the stage for potential conflict, while Simons's brief interaction with Benjamin hints at larger forces at play in his life. The scene opens with Jorgen speaking to the shipowner, Carlos. He mentions seeing Simons receive a packet and letter from the late captain, but quickly adds that he may have been mistaken and asks Carlos not to question Simons about it. Shortly after, Simons returns and Jorgen quietly steps aside. Carlos asks Simons if he is now free, and Simons confirms that he has completed his duties with the custom house officers and handed over the necessary documents. Carlos invites him to dinner, but Simons politely declines, explaining that he must visit his father first. Carlos praises Simons for being a devoted son and assures him his father has been well during his absence. Simons, however, remarks that his father is proud and would never ask for help, even if he needed it. Simons mentions another important visit he must make after seeing his father. Carlos teases him, suggesting that Nova, a young woman eagerly awaiting Simons, is the reason. Blushing, Simons clarifies that Nova is not just a lover but his fiancée. Carlos laughs and praises Nova's devotion, recounting how she frequently came to ask for news of Simon's ship. The conversation shifts to Simon's future. Carlos offers his support, hinting at plans to make Simons the captain of the Pharaon. Simons, filled with excitement and gratitude, thanks Carlos on behalf of his father and Nova. Carlos, however, explains that he needs to consult his business partner before finalizing anything. He reassures Simons that he will do everything in his power to secure the position for him. Simons asks for a short leave to handle personal matters, including his marriage and a trip to Paris. Carlos grants the leave, emphasizing that Simons must return in 3 months to prepare the ship for its next voyage. As they part ways, Carlos offers Simons the use of his skiff to go ashore. Simons, overjoyed, expresses his heartfelt thanks and departs. As Simons rows away, Carlos watches him with a warm smile, admiring the young sailor's enthusiasm and determination. In contrast, Jorgen, who has been observing from the shadows, harbors a much colder expression. While Carlos's gaze is filled with pride and trust, Jorgen is calculating, hinting at hidden jealousy or resentment. Their contrasting reactions foreshadow potential conflict as Simons embarks on the next chapter of his life. Simons left the shipowner, Jorgen, and hurried through the streets of Marseilles. His heart raced as he climbed the stairs to a small apartment where his father lived. When Simons arrived, he found his father tending to plants by the window, unaware of his return. Without hesitation, Simons embraced his father from behind and called out to him warmly. The old man, surprised and overwhelmed with joy, turned around and hugged his son tightly, trembling with emotion. Simons noticed his father's pale appearance and asked if he was unwell. The old man assured him it was only the shock of seeing him so suddenly. Simons tried to cheer him up, promising they would be happy now that he was back. His father asked if Simons would stay with him forever and wanted to hear about the good fortune that had come his way. Simons explained that Captain Josh had passed away and with the help of Carlos he might soon take the captain's position. He shared his excitement about becoming a captain at such a young age, earning a good salary, and having a share in the ship's profits. The old man was happy for his son but seemed frail. As they talked, Simons noticed something was wrong. He looked around and realized there was no wine in the house. He asked his father if he had been short on money. His father hesitated but admitted that he had used most of the money Simons left behind to pay off a debt to their neighbor, Duke. He had done this to protect Simons' reputation, even though it meant living on very little for the past 3 months. Simons was heartbroken to hear this and felt guilty for his father's suffering. He knelt before him and promised to make things better. He emptied his pockets onto the table, revealing coins and gold pieces, and told his father to buy whatever he needed. His father's face lit up with gratitude, but he said he would use the money carefully so others wouldn't think he had been waiting for Simons' return to afford anything. While they were talking, someone arrived. Simons recognized the visitor as Duke, their neighbor, and greeted him politely. Duke entered with a friendly smile, carrying some cloth he was working on as a tailor. He congratulated Simons on his return and commented on the coins on the table, suggesting Simons had come back wealthy. Though Duke spoke kindly, Simons sensed insincerity in his words. He responded politely but kept his guard up. Duke reminisced about meeting Jorgen earlier and learning of Simons' return. He claimed he had rushed over to greet Simons as a friend, and Simons' father remarked on Duke's loyalty. The conversation turned to Simons' success, with Duke subtly showing interest in the gold on the table. Simons remained composed but cautious, aware that not everyone who smiled was truly happy for him. The visit ended on a polite note, though Simons couldn't shake the feeling of unease. The young man noticed the greedy look in his neighbor's eyes and calmly explained that the money on the table didn't belong to him. He said it was his father's and had only been shown to him to prove that his father had enough in his absence. He then told his father to put the money back, but kindly added that if his neighbor needed anything, the money was available for him. The neighbor, Duke, declined the offer, saying he was not in need and his lifestyle suited his means. However, he appreciated the gesture. Simons replied that his offer was sincere, and the two exchanged some light-hearted words. Duke remarked on Simons' good standing with their employer, Mr. Carlos, hinting that he had heard Simons was well-liked. Simons modestly acknowledged Carlos's kindness, but admitted he had turned down an invitation to dine with him. When his father asked why, Simons explained he had refused because he was eager to see his father again after being away. Duke commented that refusing such an invitation might not have been wise, especially since Simons was hoping to become a captain soon. Simons reassured them that he had explained his reasons to Carlos and believed the man understood. He added that he wanted to become captain through merit rather than flattery. The conversation then shifted to Nova, the woman Simons intended to marry. His father gave him his blessing to visit her, wishing him happiness in marriage. However, Duke slyly pointed out that Nova was not yet Simons' wife and warned that she had many admirers. This made Simons uneasy, but he confidently stated his belief in her loyalty, regardless of his position as captain. Duke, with a hint of mischief, suggested Simons should visit her quickly and share his ambitions. Simons embraced his father, nodded to Duke, and left to visit Nova. Once Simons was gone, Duke lingered briefly before meeting Jorgen outside. Jorgen asked if Duke had spoken to Simons and whether he had mentioned becoming captain. Duke confirmed that Simons spoke, as if the position was guaranteed, and seemed overly confident about it. He mentioned that Simons even offered him financial help, which he declined, though he admitted he could have accepted it since he once helped Simons financially in the past. Jorgen expressed skepticism about Simons' future as captain and hinted that he could prevent it if he wanted. Duke, not liking Simons' rising status, encouraged Jorgen to explain what he meant. Jorgen then steered the conversation toward Nova, noting that trouble might arise there. Duke revealed he had seen Nova with a young Catalan man, whom she called her cousin, and suspected there might be more to their relationship. He described the man as strong, fierce-looking, and close in age to Nova. Hearing that Simons had already gone to the Catalans to see Nova, Jorgen suggested they follow. He proposed stopping at a nearby inn, Ella Reserve, to wait for news. Duke agreed, but only if Jorgen paid for their drinks. They arrived at the inn, ordered wine, and sat under the spring foliage. As they drank, they heard from the innkeeper that Simons had passed by not long ago, and was indeed at the Catalans.